So long. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Social Cafe Live. And today we have two new people to Social Cafe. So, Lena, I'm going to introduce you really quickly. Lena Hugh is on our Social Cafe team, so this is her first time on the panel. Hi, Lena.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't warn you I was going to put you on the spot there. But our featured guest tonight is Michael Cheng, co-founder, one of three co-founders, if I remember correctly, of Sniffly. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, Deborah. And hello, everyone who's joining us today.
Is that correct? One of three? Did I get that right?
Yeah, there's three
Okay,
of us.
good, good. Okay, some of the stuff, after I talk to different tool developers, like, let me keep that in the right database, spot there and there. So we just had a chat kind of to warm up for the show on different questions. And, the focus tonight was on community building. This was, my thought is, wow, this is a great tool for community building. And I do want to come back to that focus because I think Sniffly is really, really handy for building the community with the call to action and everything. But one of the things that keeps popping up is that question of, well, can somebody use this for shady purposes? Which, by the way, Michael, I would say you could use any tool. I mean, you could use your car for shady purposes out there. So
Right.
to me, that comes back down to people. But I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell us about, I've seen some really cool things in the dashboard, but you're the expert, so I'm going to let you speak.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the biggest fear people have is, are these guys building a shady product? Because that's most important to me, is the intentions behind the founders. If we set out to build a shady product, yeah, it can very well, we can use the technology, we can market it to, black hat SEO on those forums, and really shape a tool to be used for evil purposes and whatnot. But from the very beginning, our focus had always been, how do we turn this technology, framing and overlays, things that we've seen over time, in the past decade, we've seen WordPress plugins and annoying things that's been built. How do we take that technology, that concept, but really make it into something meaningful that's useful? So from very on in the early days, we wanted to target influencers. We wanted to target people who use marketing with integrity and respect to begin with. And that's where the idea started off, conversations with those people. How would you use this tool if we were to build it? What would prevent it from spiraling down into an abused tool? And one of the things that we learned very early on is the nature of a product is link sharing. So you're sharing it to your followers, which means that if you are the type to abuse, let's say you put a negative, if you want to put swear words and really reflect poorly on the original content, and you share those type of links, well, you really have to ask who follows you? Who follows the people who abuses their followers? And so we saw that early on as well. There's spam links, there's abuse, and you can't avoid it. What we do is we pay close attention to what we can learn from those, and what we see is that they almost always get no clicks. You would have someone who uses the product poorly, maybe they don't have any followers, and therefore no reach. And what we also found was people who use the tool properly, respectfully, appropriately, they tend to have a lot of followers. They respect their followers. They respect their what we call social capital, which is essentially your reputation. Because whenever you share a link, you're aligning your own brand with what you're sharing. So if you're abusing the product, you're also abusing your reputation. And that's a surefire way to lose your followers very quickly. So that's the nature of the situation with what we're dealing with. And then the second part of it is, despite that nature, what do we then do to go over and above to make sure that it's okay? So what we've recently added actually is a publisher's dashboard that allows people to go in, verify that they're the owner of a domain, and they can see a list of all the snips that's pointing towards their website. Because one thing that we saw was it's normal to fear the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Who's using Sniffly on my website? What are they doing? What are they saying? And of course, we see that it's being used right, because we see the call to actions. We see that it's appropriate messaging and there's a correlation. We see that, but other people don't see that. So transparency is really important. And with the publisher's dashboard, we're making it extremely easy for you to see for yourself all the users that are sharing and snipping your website, what they're saying on it, and also an easy option to just opt out. If you don't like Snipply, after reviewing everything, turn it off. That would automatically redirect all Snipply links pointing towards your domain to just redirect to the original URL without the overlay. And so we're not here to say anyone can snip your site without your permission, whatever it may be. You can very easily turn it off, and we've made it easy to do that. And that transparency, I think, is something that we do to show that, yeah, we're here to build a legitimate tool that can be valuable. We believe in it. We know that it's going to take a lot of work to shape it in that direction. And we've done a lot of work to shape it in that direction, everywhere from, we have an 80 character limit, and that's a prime example of our attention to detail, because we don't want the focus of the link to be the call to action. The call to action is great, and it's bonus, it's cherry on the pudding, but the focus is the contents, and we want to be sure of that. And that's why we have very short messages. The design's always in the corner. We always try to make it as subtle as possible. So I think it's those little things over time really adds up to become a tool that is very difficult to use for shady purposes with all the constraints and transparency that we put out there.
Wow, that was an awesome answer to that question. To me, listening to you, Michael, it seems like you fixed it. I mean, I don't know if there's anything in the world that you could say, well, I've 100% fixed this because someone's. But I mean, to me, as I listen to you, I don't really see a hole other than when we go back to the fact that in this world there are shady people that exist. But like you said, who's following the shady people unless they're shady people too?
Yeah. Yeah, and I probably can't cover all the things that we do in terms of security on this podcast, but we pay attention to people who create an abnormal number of links. A lot of spammers tend to use automation, and they may create 1,000 links within a split second. We disable any accounts that do that. Even if they pay a lot of money or generate a lot of conversions, it doesn't matter to us, because the reputation of the users becomes the reputation of our tool and our company as a whole. And so there's a really strong focus in our company to ensure that it is used properly and appropriately and non-offensively, and really to limit the possibilities of abuse for the tool.
I think that's key. That's very quotable right there. I'm going to do, like I said last time, by the way, a little technical difficulty. I'll spare the viewers that one, but a little snip of this video, because what you just said right there, that's the key. When you start to see comments out there that say, oh, it's a shady tool. No, it's a tool like any other tool that shady people may use for shady purposes. But what you said really speaks to the core of Sniffly, as far as we're not out there as Sniffly to do anything unethical. And I think that's the key. Very well said. I'm going to bring you in, Lena, so I'll give you a little chance to percolate on any ideas that you may have, because I know you're a highly intelligent woman. And I'm thinking about like uses, like ethical uses, and I thought of this because just this, when you said 80 character limit and like people automating this, I thought, wow, it took me like 15 minutes to come up with a snip the other day, but I was supporting Eileen Smith, and I went to see, it was her page that was advertising her YouTube tribe on Triber. So what I did is I found the link for the, how to join the tribe, and I used that as the call to action on her page. I don't know, maybe I'm just altruistic. There wasn't any like payment or anything for that. I just thought, well, this is really a really fun way. Is that something, I mean, do people go out and like, hey, I want to help my friend, and start creating snips? That might be one example of a snip that someone could.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and we see a lot of the ethical usages on our end. For nonprofits who are sharing an article about a critical issue, and they want to gather support for their cause. And when we see use cases like that, and that's really what shows us that, okay, it's popular in marketing, but that doesn't mean it's strictly for people selling things or trying to get you to sign up for products. There's a lot of really great usages that we've seen, or everywhere from casual messages, sending a link to your customers and adding a custom message that says, thank you for using our product. If you need any help, please email me anytime. And so it's really a tool that lets you put anything you want on there, and it doesn't have to be marketing. It's an opportunity for you to customize the experience of the links that you share.
That's excellent. So you could share, for instance, I'm going to share 10 articles that I've written on a specific area of marketing, and then add the call to action of, hey, subscribe to my newsletter at the bottom. And they could be my articles on other blogs, and it's still an ethical use of Sniffly.
Yeah, and actually a lot of users use Sniffly to snip their own websites as well. And it might sound counterintuitive because it's your website, why don't you just code it in? Well, herein lies the issue. You have to code it in. And what we find is, especially with bigger companies, with IT departments, if you want to set up a dynamic call to action, you're going to get that approved through IT, you're going to get the code implemented, changed, and whatnot. But we've really created a tool that allows you to dynamically change the call to action on your page through the link itself. So marketing teams now have a lot more control over what shows up in the links that they share, even when they're sharing their own blog posts. So it's not always just third-party content.
That reminds me, I was going to write an article. I'll have to tag you on it so you see it or let you know. But one on how to use Sniffly as far as the just basically sharing on any article, because a lot of times one of my little pet peeves, because I'm really anal and the whole sharing thing, is when I tweet something from a page. I really like to, and I include this on my own blogs, but I like to have the article name by and then the Twitter handle via and then the name of the blog. And I probably 80%, no offense to people out there, but 80% of them are not set up that way. So then I have to like go look it up. Well, anyway, with Sniply,
Right.
I can actually do that and create. I am really geeky, I admit, and create the link so that people can like kind of like a click to tweet. I can say,
Right.
hey, tweet this, and I've built all that information in to help the person sharing it. It really is not necessarily of value to me, but it helps people sharing it. So it's like, look, now you don't have to look up this information. You can just follow this snip,
Right.
and everything's built right into the tweet.
Right.
Okay, geeky mouthful. I admit on that one. Hey, Lena, you work a lot as far as research. Anything pop
Yes.
in your mind as far as a use case for Snipply?
Well, I think now my background is in science research, so now social media is becoming a bigger and bigger player in that because people want to share their results and people want to get what they're doing out there just for people to know what the results are because they spend all this time working on it. So I think this could be a really great tool to link back to an article that you saw or a news article that you saw that relates your work to somebody else's and start collaborations that way.
Wow. That's like a whole new world. I'm thinking collaborations because I just finished, I think I'm brain dead in research. But so you're talking about like you could maybe, for instance, tag somebody and let them know this is an article that you found, and then they'll get a notice and they can go add to that, almost like a whole stream of information via Snipply.
Right. Just links on links.
Do you see that at all, Michael?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of room to play. Things like tagging and really including other people into the conversation. Those are all down the road in the roadmap. But the core idea is, what does it look like when we put the sharer in the driver's seat and give them the power to influence the experience, the consumer experience or the viewing experience of the links that they share. And I think there's, when you give people power, there's certainly opportunities for people to use it the right or wrong way. But there's a tremendous amount of people who use it for the right way, and those tend to be the people with a lot of followers and with a lot of influence and a lot of reach for their links, and that's what I love seeing the most personally.
What do we call that? Social karma or something? I'm not sure if you were the first one to use that term on
Yeah.
Tools TV, but
I think we talked about it last time as well, and if you abuse your followers, you're going to expect your follower count to go down.
right. And I've seen that as far as you look at the people that you want to follow, and they tend to be the people that probably should be followed.
Right, and another thing is, earned media is one thing that we see just so often. Is you work so hard to earn the coverage on, let's say, a news site, or TechCrunch writes about your startup. A lot of people use that opportunity to link back to their company, because even if a reputable news source writes about you, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll prominently display where to sign up, your current offers. They may talk about you, but the people that are reading that article at the time, they're reading a review on your product. They want to learn more. They want to sign up, and oftentimes they get lost in waves of text and they end up leaving without ever visiting the actual product that they read about. So having a clear call to action is very important when it comes to owned media, earned media, or even third-party content.
So that makes sense. So now you're actually doing twofold, where you're saying find me here, which is a call to action via Snipply, but then you're also
Right.
saying, look at this, I was mentioned, on TechCrunch or whatever. So you've kind of got a dual process there.
Right.
And that reminded me of a question that just floated in and floated out as far as, do you have a page? I know you mentioned that you have some highlighted use cases. Do you have, like, are you collecting use cases? Is there any place where someone can come to you and say, wow, I've got one that you don't have highlighted yet? I just think it'd be cool to see all the different possibilities for use cases.
That would be cool. I actually keep a personal list, a rolling list of that, and the reason why we haven't published it specifically is because we're against telling people how to use the product, and we've been very clear from that in the beginning. Is we'll teach you how to use it, but we don't want to constrain the imagination and the creativity of the user, because that's where we learn the most. When we do things like publish use cases and say, well, here's how you can use Sniffly, blah, blah, we don't really want to say this is how you must use Sniffly, and I think that's the clear distinction. Because if we did do that, if we said, here's how marketers can get people to download your product, well, we don't want to limit people to use it as a personal messaging platform or to fund their Kickstarter campaign. But those are the things that we were really curious about. Is if you want to host a contest and you have to collect, let's say, coupon codes or parts of a coupon code that's hidden within the link that you share throughout a Twitter campaign, and only 3 out of 10 links contain the Sniffly link, which has a piece to a puzzle, and you want to run a game like that, those type of creativities we really want to encourage, and those are the really cool use cases. We want to keep the tool as open as possible from that regards.
So your concern is if we say, hey, these are the 100 ways we could use it, people will actually start to constrain themselves and think, oh, there's only 100 ways, and they won't come up with that 101st way of using Sniffly.
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, that's I'm not against publishing 100 use cases. I think that'd be great. But I'm against publishing like maybe 5 and saying here is the only ways you can use it. I do think we'll publish it eventually, but I think we're still in the stage of gathering all the potential uses of our products because we're learning every day as well. We're learning from our users on what we've created. We had a simple idea, we put it out there, and we let people use it in whatever way that they want. And the way they use it then comes back to define what we build next to better support the use cases that they're pursuing. And that's where we've come up with analytics and additional team members, different themes. Those are all from watching how people use the product and how they would like to use the product.
Very cool. It's like quality assurance, testers, and continuous process improvement all built in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's super important.
Oh, and before I forget, I'm going to interrupt all of us to have you let us know what it is. We have, for those of you that watch these every week, we have the giveaways that's happening on June 16th. I think I have the date. It's at the very end of our tool series, and one of the giveaways will be for Sniffly. So, Michael, I'm going to let you describe what it is that they win if they win the giveaway specifically for Sniffly.
Yeah, so we're doing a really cool giveaway. It's 1 month of free Sniffly, but we're doing it across any plan. So our largest plan is actually $2,000 a month, which means this giveaway potentially could be valued up to $2,000 that you can claim. And some of our higher end features really gives you access to a lot of things like creating your own themes using HTML and CSS to truly defining how the snip shows up. Being able to customize it, really removing the Sniffly branding, all of the stuff that we charge a lot of big companies for. Millions of clicks per month and whatnot. So you'll really get a good idea of what it's like to be a power user of Sniffly, having access to every single thing we've ever built since we first started for the duration of that month. And that's what we'll be giving away. Very
cool. And how many of those are we giving away?
I'll leave that up to you, Deborah. It's your show.
Okay. I just slipped that one in there. Another question. Okay, that is wonderful, guys. You guys sign up. Like, I wish I could win my own contest because I want that so bad. The $2,000 a month. That's great. So yeah, be sure to visit socialcafechat.com, and you can actually almost click on any link, but specifically to find this one, go to the Twitter calendar, which is right at the top, and then go to the date today, which is the 14th. And you will see the giveaway, so you can enter it even now as you're watching the show. So, and we'll also have a contest page, but that's how you can do it while you're watching. Thank you so much for sharing the details of that, and I will clip this portion and stick it in with the giveaway so people can see you announcing what they win. I want to get back to another question that came up in the Twitter chat. Why, I even interrupt myself. One of them was the ROI, and is there a way, like, I know that you guys see what's going on in the back end, but is there a way that, I mean, there's analytics built in too, that people can really see the efforts and what they get as far as the ROI?
So the ROI is interesting because the ROI is essentially actions on the call to action. And so the ROI then depends on your call to action. For the most simplest ones, for example, if your call to action is to download your app, then the ROI would be very clear. It's clicks on your download page, how many people actually download your product. ROI can also come in the form of a newsletter subscription. If you use Sniffly Forms, for example, then when people interact with your call to action, you get an additional email in your address list. In more complicated use cases, a lot of companies use it for branding purposes. So maybe they would link to a blog post that's about their company culture, which may not necessarily have a direct ROI, but it exposes people to their company culture, perhaps making their company more desirable to work for in the future when they actually do hire. So there's everywhere from very concrete and tangible ROI to exactly how many page visits, app downloads, to something more nebulous like branding, exposure. And we've seen creative use cases that I talked about earlier. So ROI could be submission to a contest, for example. It could be any number of interactions. It could be likes on Facebook, follows on Twitter. A lot of people use it to kind of mix up their social media channels. So they might share a link on Facebook And then the call to action would be to follow them on Twitter. Vice versa, they share a link on Twitter, encourages people to like them on Facebook. So the call to action is really completely flexible to the user's control.
So the analytics, and I should know this, obviously I spend more time creating snips than analyzing the analytics and the dashboard, but it's kind of like an analytics on the links, and if people really wanted to get granular on the actual conversions, for all of the examples that you give, you could create a separate, almost like A/B testing. So if it's like a newsletter subscription, and like for instance, I use GetResponse, I could create a separate campaign in GetResponse and only use that with Sniffly. I could call it Sniffly, and then the form that I use within Sniffly only connect those two, so that I know that every single subscription on that campaign is directly related, and I can measure the results. Otherwise, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, it seems like, for example, if I'm using GetResponse and I'm using a Social Web Cafe campaign, I might not know if the person subscribed via the Sniffly or via my website.
Right. So a couple things. First of all, the integrations. Glad you mentioned it. We have over 30 integrations, so you can plug into MailChimp, GetResponse, a lot of those other software. Another thing is you can actually see the submissions directly on Sniffly itself. So you can track how many submissions and who they are on Sniffly itself. And that way you can compare it with your master list, which you may have other channels pointing towards. And while we're on the subject of analytics, that's also something that we actually spent a lot of time building. One of the tools that I find most interesting is, as a content curator, you don't actually know whether or not people like the content that you're sharing. With basic analytics tools like Twitter Analytics, for example, you get how many people are clicking or retweeting or liking, but you don't know how long they're spending on the content that you share, how many pages they visit, what's the bounce rates. If you share a BuzzFeed article that's viral and 1 million people click it, but what if the bounce rate is 99.99%? You just don't have access to those insights. Well, when you share a Snipply link, you have control over that. You can actually see how long are people spending on the content that you're sharing? What is the bounce rate? Are they visiting 10 more pages after they visit the initial page? So when somebody clicks on a Snipply link during that session, you as the sharer actually has insights, and therefore you can feed it back to your decisions afterwards. When I share New York Times, do people stay there longer, or do they like it more when I share Mashable? And that really allows you to refine your content curation strategy and start A/B testing from a content sharing point of view on a level that was never, you couldn't really do it before, simply because you don't have that level of insights.
Wow, I think that actually goes beyond even the question, because I was thinking just the initial, how the whole tracking as far as the entrance and the exit on the website, that definitely answers that question. But it makes sense now when I think about the URL structure. And since we have, it's not like we have 10 hours to talk about this, I'll spare all you guys my geeky thoughts on this one. But I'm going to pop over to Lena, because Lena, I've been dominating the questions and haven't given you a chance to ask any questions. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. You're the marketing expert here. I think you should be the one asking the questions.
Do you have any questions related to the use of Snipply or anything that we've talked about?
No, I think all of Michael's answers have been great. It went beyond the questions and really gave some good insight into Snipply, and not limit the use, but help us understand how to use it.
No, definitely. See, that's the problem, Michael, is you're so good at what you do that it's like, I have this question in my head, and it's like, wow, look what he said. I forget what it was. And I'm trying to make sure I cover, what came up in the Twitter chat to make sure that the viewers are actually catching the answers to those, which reminds me of one, and this might be more of a personal question, because maybe I'm not using the word the same way that the rest of the world does, but I keep using content curation. Which, by the way, it's interesting. Microsoft Word doesn't like the word curation, but I like it, so I use it. But I think of, you can go from, this is my definition, and if I'm wrong, go ahead and blow me out of the water on this one. But I think of curation as, for example, Storify on one side, where you're just grabbing sources. It could be nothing original, but just grabbing everything from the web, YouTube, and you're grabbing tweets and Facebook and everything into one curated document, if you will. But I also kind of include content sharing. Now, is the content sharing not a part of that bigger landscape?
In my definition, and I think the reason why Microsoft doesn't have it registered is because it's such a new term, and I think we're all trying to define it right now. Content sharing, content curation to me is very similar, because curation to me, it implies that there's been some attention put into some sort of filtering process. So there's 1 million pieces of content. As a curator, you then pick 10 pieces to share. To me, sharing inherently includes that, because when you're sharing content, you do think before you share it. You think about, is this going to be relevant to my audience? Are they going to enjoy? Yeah, we hope that if you're a good content curator or content sharer, you would think about whether or not it's relevant to your audience. So I do see them as very much the same thing.
Okay, I just want to, I want to check on this one. And like you said, it is a new term, but I view it as, I don't know if shades of gray is the right term, but as far as a magnitude of how much of it is curation, whether it's a complete document or a portion. Well, thank you for relieving me on that one, because some of the social strategy that we've taught our clients is kind of that 80-20, where so that it's not like all about me, all about me, all about me, that you're spending 80% curating other people's content that you think is valuable and 20% of your original. Which was the whole basis for where I was thinking of the direction as far as community building with Sniffly. And guys, I won't let you down. You've gotten like more information than what I even imagined for the show. I should have known, because I've talked to you before, Michael, so I really should do that. But for those of you watching this, I will put together a slide share, and I will tweet that out. That will include what Michael has responded, as well as some other insights, so that you are not left empty-handed on the whole concept of community building with Sniffly. And that said, Michael, help. Any tips on community building with Sniffly?
Yeah, so if you look on the Snipply Twitter channel, for example, it's all curation. We're a small team. We don't have the budget to hire writers to pump out blog posts, and we have a decision to make. Are we going to try our best to write mediocre blog posts? And nobody wins when we do that, because we share blog posts that are not superb, and people read it, they think it's a waste of time. Or do we help other people succeed, whether it's competitors or adjacent marketers? We share content that's relevant to our audience. So Buffer, for example, love their blog posts, and that's, to me, is the role. Yeah, it's great, right? It's the role of the curator is to filter that, though. You might think, oh, if they like Buffer, why would they follow Snipply? Why don't they just follow Buffer? Well, Buffer writes about a lot more than just marketing. They write about HR, they write about running startups, entrepreneurship, funding, and if you follow Buffer, you're going to get all of that. And when people follow Snipply, and when we're building the community, they're saying, I care about these certain things. And Snipply, as a curator, is going to take the time to read all of Buffer's blog posts and only pick out the 3 that I would really care about. And so that, to me, that filter is very important. Because if you follow Mashable, or if you follow TechCrunch, you're going to get a lot of noise. These publications cover a lot of things, and that's where communities start to build. You trust in a person's judgment. When I trust you, Deborah, that you will share things that I care about, that's when I start to pay a lot of attention to you and everything that you share, and click on everything that you care about. And then the Snipply component comes in, because curation is important, but what do you get in return for that? You spend all of your time reading everybody's posts and articles. You then pick out 10. Maybe it takes you a couple hours. You share it, and then that's kind of the end of the story. They never end up visiting Social Web Cafe. They never end up. They might not even remember who you are, because they click on the link. They click on so many links. You have so many tabs, and so Snipply gives you an opportunity to add a small piece in there, a call to action. Maybe you want them to do something, whether it's subscribe for something or download something, check out something. So what we really set out to do in community building is, there's already great community builders out there, but we want to make it as an effective marketing strategy too. And you mentioned it earlier, you teach your clients 80-20, but the 20% has a clear ROI. But how do you then tell a client that, okay, well, the 80% that you need to do actually has a very nebulous ROI, and we don't know how to track it, but you still have to do it. And that's what the world has kind of been like, and so we wanted to create something where we say 20% very clear ROI, 80% still very clear ROI. It may not be 100% conversion, maybe it's 5% conversion, but at least we can tangibly say, here's your conversion rate on shared content. And that's how I see Snipply fitting into the community building process.
Very beautiful. Nicely stated on that one. See, there you go, guys. That's just concise in what Michael just shared. And you brought up something. See, as far as the branding, there's so many times I've even been on shows like this, and I said, "Oh, I remember reading this," and it was probably a tweet, so it was very short. It's like, wow, I wish I could remember who it was that said. Like, I want to give credit to the quote giver or the quote sayer or whatever, right. But I can't remember who told me, and that's a good point. That even if it's a visual, a real quick glimpse, at least if you're seeing that branding, it's like, oh yeah, I learned that from Michael over at Sniffly, or I learned that from Eileen Smith or Lena, or you can actually share that. Excellent. Well, I'm really sad that it's actually 7 o'clock here on the West Coast. Well, I mean, it's nice, it's early evening, but I'm sad that we're done. But We like to get this out to our Twitter stream as soon as possible. So when we close out, it actually goes out automatically with the Social Cafe hashtag. Obviously, those that are watching already have seen it, but will be available for replay in the raw version. And watch for the this time, Michael. You know, you have been on my mind. I am seriously putting video snips with Sniffly overlay on Facebook. It's really happening. So
that'd be great.
And I think I finally remembered to friend request you, so you wouldn't have seen the other ones anyway.
I accepted it.
Thank you. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Lena, for joining us. Next time I'll let you talk more.
No problem.
And thank you so much, Michael, for joining us. And guys, be sure to visit snip.ly, Sniply.
And if anyone has any questions, I'm always reachable at team@snip.ly. We answer any questions. So if you want us to elaborate on anything that we touched on today, you can expect a very long email from me going very detailed into explaining anything you'd like to know.
Cool, fellow geek. And you know what? This is the first time I haven't said, where can we find you? But thank you for, for throwing that in there. All right, thanks all for tuning in. We'll see you same time, same place next week. And thank you again, Michael, and thanks, Lena.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.